Welcome to the DFS Build, a show dedicated to breaking down each DraftKings slate. This will be for the NBA DFS slate on Tuesday, February 6th, a nice six-gamer. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined by Taylor Smith, who we will be going game by game, highlighting the top plays and values, and also looking at projections and ownership. Do us a favor and like this video if we help you in any way. And if you want to see more of these videos, please subscribe to our channel so you get alerted for future episodes. You can also find us on Spotify, and that link can be found on our YouTube page. This video is sponsored by DFS Hero, which has a versatile lineup optimizer and plenty of features that can help you score a takedown. Right now, you can actually get 15% off when you sign up using our link, which is located in the video description below. As for today, like I said, this is a nice six-game slate, a little bit more palatable than some recent slates. It is also a bit problematic because there's some injury news that we have not received yet. I believe Luka Doncic is questionable, and a few other guys are worth monitoring. That said, let's dive right into it, Taylor. We got Rockets versus Pacers as the first game of the night. Very nice 244.5 total. Pacers are actually, am I right about that? Yeah, yep. Pacers are 8.5-point home favorites. Boy, FVV really has an impact, doesn't he? Fred VanVleet is out. We know that much for sure on the Houston side, and so is Tari Eason. So that impacts the Rockets a great deal, so much so that they are massive road dogs. Tyrese Halliburton on the other side is questionable. Him being out would open things up considerably, and Jalen Smith is also questionable. All right, Taylor, so starting on the Houston side, who stands out for you?
Obviously, Amen Thompson. Probably going to start at point guard, going to play enough minutes to get there. He's at like 1.17 points per minute without VanVleet and Tari Eason. So phenomenal per minute guy. He's kind of in the Ben Simmons, Draymond Green mold. Like he can't really shoot, but he does everything else. So far too cheap for the role. He'll play tonight. Very obvious chalk play, but I think it's good chalk. Aaron Holiday for 3-3, I think is fine as a punt. Backup point guard minutes should be there for him. Maybe a little overlap between the two. So I don't think you necessarily have to fade Amen to play Aaron Holiday. Jabari Smith, cheapest price point of the whole season at 5.2. Hasn't been very good lately. Usage has been way down, but it's a good get-right spot against Indiana. Şengün, Jalen Green, going to look great. More usage for both without VanVleet. And Dylan Brooks, I think it's kind of sneaky. He should get a usage bump as well. Under 5K. Not really going to be as popular as some of these other guys, so I don't mind that either.
Yeah, good breakdown. I don't really have a whole lot more to add other than, I'm fully eating the Amen Thompson chalk. I don't really care. 50% boom rating, which to my recollection is the best boom rating DFS Hero has produced since we started doing this. So that's insane. His actual projection doesn't blow you away, but he's 4.1. So 54% ownership projection here, be damned. I'm eating that all the way. Also really like Şengün. His prices come up, but he's got a 24% boom rating. He does garner ownership in a game that could blow out, but the Pacers are one of the best matchups in DFS. So I like him quite a bit. Going over to the Indiana side of things, obviously Halliburton being in or out is pretty huge for us. I wouldn't really pay much mind to him, even though his price is all the way down to 8.6K. He's still limited, and obviously we don't even know if he's in. And Jalen Smith being out would open the door for guys like Isaiah Jackson, and obviously make solidify Miles Turner a little bit more. So for the Pacers, who do you like?
Turner for 6, I guess, is fine. That's pretty cheap for him. Minutes have been all over the place, so it's a little bit concerning, but cheap enough to go back to. Siakam would look better if Halliburton's out. Ditto for McConnell and Nembhard, but as things stand, I don't really see a lot. Aaron Nesmith looks like a little bit of a chase, coming off another big game the other night. Wide range of outcomes for him, but the minutes have been there of late. But otherwise, not a lot to like.
Yeah, I would agree that Naismith is a bit chasey if Halliburton is in. If Halliburton is out, there's a lot of usage that's going to be split up here, and I would imagine it flocks towards Naismith, and that would also solidify his minutes. His minutes have been pretty good. And obviously, if Halliburton's out, Siakam at 8.3, even in a not-so-great matchup, that's pretty appealing to me. Everybody else kind of eats into each other. I'm with you on Miles Turner at the price point, but he hasn't been great, and his minutes are pretty wonky. So yeah, not really super excited to get to the Pacers here, but I would imagine based off the spread, we will get Halliburton in. which probably means we don't need to prioritize anybody on that side of this game. All right, moving on. We got the Mavs against the Nets. The biggest injury item on the slate is Luka Doncic being questionable. Let's see, what's his exact injury here?
Nose.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Okay, so nose contusion. So he projects well if in. It's obviously a pretty good matchup. He's got a good 35% boom rating. But if he's out, what do you make of that?
Obviously, then it's Kyrie, Tim Hardaway season mainly.
Yeah.
Jaden Hardy, I don't really have interest in either way at 5K. I think he's overpriced. Luka is the third Mav with a nose injury. Maxi Kleber and Derek Lively also have nose injuries right now. And they have Dwight Powell with an eye laceration or something like that.
What's going on with their training staff? Like, what is...
Perhaps they should stop getting hit in the face or something.
I mean, are they like doing boxing matches in between games?
Luka has a nose contusion, which doesn't sound serious, but it does sound pretty painful. If he's in, he's certainly worth playing. Last night he was quite dreadful, but good matchup again tonight. Pretty high total for them. So fine with it either way. I think Irving looks good at 8.5, even if Luka's in. There's a ceiling there for the dollar. But he'll be a smash if he's out, of course.
Yeah, good advice all around. I second everything there. I will note Maxi Kleber has been good 2 games in a row, so that feels like a landmine waiting to happen. Good value, and if Luka's out, the usage is going to see an uptick. But all these guys kind of eat into each other. I'm with you on Jaden Hardy. I don't really care, even if Luka's out. 5K is a bit too much. And, he's Jaden Hardy. So the only other thing would be if Luka is in. Like yesterday, I was off of Luka because Kyrie was back. I think you can still lean into that logic. But if he's in and going to be lower owned based off of his injury or his price or recency bias, then suddenly Luka at potential low ownership looks pretty appealing. All right, on the other side of this game, obviously it's supposed to be a close game, and perhaps we should lead into that point spread a little bit and think if it's only a 4-point spread, does that tell us maybe Luka's out? Maybe. Ben Simmons could be back here. He's probably going to play a minimal role off the bench. Cam Johnson, I believe, is doubtful.
He's doubtful.
Yeah, so he left last night's game with an injury, and Lonnie Walker, he screwed me. He left after 4 freaking minutes. So he's out too. Dorian Finney-Smith is out. De'Aaron Sharp remains out. So the Nets are going to be kind of shorthanded here, which might increase some usage for some of these guys and make some of these guys stand out. So for you, which Nets stand out?
Yeah, not dying to do this after last night. A lot of them were awful, but Dennis Smith and Royce O'Neal are the standouts. Dennis Smith played 30 minutes last night without Lonnie Walker and presumably Cam Johnson. He's going to look good again for 4-2. Royce O'Neal should start without Finney-Smith and Johnson, so enough minutes to make him look good at 4-1. Dinwiddie doesn't get usage anymore for some reason, but he's still cheap. I think you can do that, even though it really feels bad. Cam Thomas and Mikal Bridges are going to see most of the usage. Claxton's fine if he doesn't get ejected again tonight. And Ben Simmons looks a little pricey for 20 minutes, but we did see a couple games ago. There's still a ceiling, but he's not cheap enough to really chase it.
No, I can't do that. I see the logic. Everything you said here makes sense for the Nets. I will say, for me, it's going to be more of like an ownership game. Yesterday, I kind of ate a lot of that Nets chalk and didn't really put much thought into it just because they were cheap and it made sense. But if Dennis Smith Jr. is going to push 20% north ownership, I might start getting away from him because he's Dennis Smith Jr. and Ben Simmons is going to eat into whatever playmaking role he's going to be taking on. And Spencer Dinwiddie, honestly, if he's going to be low owned at 5.3, I'll take those major minutes. 39 minutes last night. I'll take those minutes and just hope that the role is there. All right, moving on. We have a really ghastly game, the Magic and the Heat in South Beach. The Heat are 3-point favorites with a horrific 213.5 total. For me, this game already feels like a total fade, but let's start on the Magic side. Who do you like?
Absolutely no one.
Yeah,
like Wagner and Banchero, like maybe, but Wendell Carter maybe a little cheap. Not really wanting to play Jonathan Isaac at 3.6 in his non-existent role. So Minutes have been up a little bit lately for him, but it just feels awful. I don't want to get to anything here, as usual.
Yeah, that is worth noting that his minutes are ticking up, though. That's a good call because he has historically been a pretty good fantasy points per minute guy. Not really on the years so much. But yeah, I'm not really interested in Magic. Banchero does project okay. Nobody else projects that well. Wendell Carter is cheap, but he's facing Bam. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm not really clicking Magic guys tonight. Good for GPPs, I guess, but that's I mean, in theory, because they shouldn't garner ownership. All right, on the other side, you have the Heat led by Bam Adebayo in terms of projection and price. He also has a 25% boom rating. So the Magic are not a friendly matchup for DFS, as you can see by this horrifying total. But these guys are all really good prices, so we have to at least talk about them. So starting with Bam, who do you like for Miami?
I don't mind Jimmy. He's been playing well. Usage has been up for him over the last few games. Still maybe a little bit cheap. Tyler Hero's going to be back. Duncan Robinson's back. So they have a full roster, looks like, and the matchup sucks and the total sucks. So I suppose you can get to Bam or Hero or Rozier, but Jimmy's the only one that looks somewhat viable to me, but even that's like secondary play at best.
Yeah, as is the case with a lot of these teams that have several good players and are healthy, these guys kind of just eat into each other. I think the only guy at all that stands out for me is going to be Bam. It's still not a good matchup for him. It's not a good matchup for anybody in this game on either side because both these teams are slow-paced and play good defense. But he's sub 8K, not owned, 40-point projection, solid boom rating. And by the way, he's eaten in these games against the Magic. In 3 games, he's averaging 42 fantasy points per contest. So yeah, I like him okay if you land on him, but I cannot make him a priority on this slate. Moving on to a really, truly dreadful game, but one that we can't completely ignore. Memphis in the Madison Square Garden against the Knicks. They are 14.5-point dogs. Just really disgusting stuff. 213 total. Memphis is a source of value, and if all the guys are in, they do have some interesting mid-range plays. But it is important to note that we know that Jaren Jackson Jr. is out. Xavier Tillman and is he out or doubtful? He's doubtful. Okay. Xavier Tillman and JJJ are doubtful, and pretty much everybody else they have is questionable. So last time out, the Grizzlies ran an 8-man rotation, and they were pretty much a necessity on that slate. If they run an 8-man rotation again, I would imagine we're in the same boat. With that in mind, whether these guys are in or out, who are you liking here?
If they're in, I think Aldama looks fine. The minute should be there for him with Jackson and Tillman likely out. But if he's out, I guess we're going back to like Trey Jemison, Gigi Jackson, and Toshan Eboba or whatever.
Good effort. Yeah, it's true.
It's not pronounced the way it looks. I know that. Matt Hurt played 30 minutes in the last game. Didn't do much because he's Matt Hurt. Scottie Pippen and what's his name?
Jacob Gilyard,
who is 5'8", would play most of the point guard minutes. If Derrick Rose is out, I don't know. It's a wait and see. If they're shorthanded, you can play them all. But if they're not, they have a 99 team total, which I think is the lowest I've seen all year. So let's not do that.
Also, this is the first time I feel like I've seen a full team with nobody cracking a 30-point fantasy projection. Vince Williams, if he plays, comes in at the high point with 29.26 per DFS hero here. And he and Aldama actually have okay boom ratings relative to the slate. But, okay, if these guys are in, I see the value with Aldama and maybe Vince. Like, they're fine, and Kennard is fine, but they are not priority plays. If these guys are out and this team is down to 8 bodies again, you absolutely should have some Memphis guys in your lineup. And
you have to. You have no choice at that point.
Right. So, by the way, Memphis, they don't really get blown out that much. They play really hard. They're coached really well. Like, I wouldn't be that shocked.
They got their ass kicked in the last game with 8 guys.
Recency bias, my friend.
Oh, they're playing the Knicks. They're probably going to get their ass kicked.
I don't think it matters if you have 8 guys, 5 of those dudes.
No, it doesn't matter. They have to play.
Yeah, so. Exactly. And I don't even know.
It's G Leaguers, like they're going to try. They're not NBA guys that are.
That too. Good point. So with that in mind, by the way, on the other side, I still don't fear the blowout here either, because Tibbs is just running these dudes into the ground. Last game, the Knicks played a 7-man rotation, and everybody's getting like 40 minutes. So I don't care about the blowout. Let other people be afraid of the blowout risk. Speaking of that, the Knicks look awesome on this slate. Total be damned. They all project decently. The one who projects the best by far is Jalen Brunson, and still is too cheap at 9.7K. So over on the New York side, who do you like?
Everyone. DiVincenzo, Hart, McBride, Achua, Brunson, Hartenstein. They're all playable. Achua doesn't get usage, but he's been playing 40 minutes with Anunoby and Quentin Grimes out. So fine going back to it. Don't see any reason to avoid him.
Yep, I'm with you. DiVincenzo specifically, his price has not come up enough actually for what his role in production has been. Josh Hart is also too. All these guys are too cheap, honestly. So yeah, you can play every guy. I don't even want to talk priority, just because it just depends where else you're going with your build process and your exposures. But they're all viable. I wouldn't really pay attention to Jericho Sims or Malachi Flynn, but I do like Miles McBride at 3.7. He could push for 20 to 30 minutes off the bench. But yeah, everybody else is in play, and I feel pretty good about them. Worth noting, those top 4 guys here all have 23% or higher boom ratings, and they all have pretty good projections. They are carrying some ownership. DiVincenzo specifically 30% owned. Precious Achua at almost 28% ownership, though that might be one where on this slate we could kind of go away from if he's going to be super chalky. I do like him, and he's still a good price, but if he's going to be really chalky, he's not really necessarily a high usage guy, so that might be one we could go away from. All right, moving on, we got Timberwolves and Bulls in Chicago. The Bulls are 5.5-point home dogs against a really good defense in Minnesota. Naturally, this has a 216.5 total because these teams are not very fast, and Minnesota plays good defense. Starting on the Wolves side, who do you like?
They always look a little cheap for what they do. Edwards and Towns in particular. Gobert under 7K, I think looks good. The matchup's good for Edwards and Conley. The Bulls kind of funnel 3-point shooters, so the shooters should fare well. I guess you can group Towns in there too. He's kind of a perimeter big. Don't want to play Anthony Edwards and Towns together. Probably don't want to play Gobert and Towns together, but individually they all look pretty interesting. I think Jaden McDaniels is another kind of sub 4K value you can consider just because the minutes are there. Doesn't get much usage, but he should be pretty low owned compared to some of the other 4K guys.
Yeah, I think my lead would be Cat just because he's cheaper than Ant. He's projected to be less owned. He has a better projection. He averages more fantasy points per minute. I just think he's got a better boom rating. I just think he looks like the better play, but you probably can't go wrong here. I think Cat and Ant look good. Rudy is probably a little bit too cheap. And all these other guys offer decent value and interesting pivots. I like that you noted Jaden McDaniels. A lot of minutes for a guy who's only 3.9K. And, that some of these guys could offer pivots off of the Nets value or some of the other guys we look at, like the Memphis guys, if it comes to that. So I would not ignore Minnesota here at all. On the other side, we have the Bulls, who it's kind of the same story. And when these guys are all healthy, they all look pretty good, but nobody stands out as a priority. DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, and Kobe White all look pretty good. They're all still stuck at their same prices they've been all year. Worth noting that Alex Caruso is questionable. Kobe White is probable. I think he was the one who missed last game, and then Ayo Dosunmu ended up being a smash play. So how do you feel about Chicago here with them pretty much at full strength, especially if Caruso ends up playing?
Yeah, was it Caruso that missed the last game? Whatever.
Yeah, let me check. I might be wrong about. I thought it was White that ended up missing. Let's see, 2, 3.
They both played.
Okay, they both played. Okay, so it was Caruso who's out. So Caruso coming back in would
Caruso played in the last game.
Who missed the most recent game? Somebody missed.
Someone did.
Well, Pat Williams has been out. I know that.
And Levine, but
is that what
someone else did?
Really?
I don't know. Either way, Dosunmu is going to play a ton. If Caruso's out, he's probably going to play 40 minutes.
Right.
Maybe Javon Carter, which is pretty gross, but he's only 3K. Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry. It's really nasty down there. So I think I just want to stick with those three main guys into Sumu. Torrey Craig is cheap, but he's probably limited. He missed quite a bit of time. He only played 14 minutes in the last game. So, yeah, the main guys look good, but the value, I think, is a little bit too thin for this slate.
Yeah, I think AO's price coming up makes me not that interested. I like that none of these guys are going to be owned at all. So there's that. And the prices are good, but it's not a good matchup. I mean, I don't really feel amazing about playing DeMar or Vooch or Kobe White against this Minnesota defense. Not that you should let defensive matchups completely dictate how you're going to, build out your lineups, but I don't know. Just on this slate, they don't really stand out as priorities because then if you're paying for one of these guys, then you're probably going away from Dante DiVincenzo, who's just a better play than these guys in this slate, or maybe you're kind of getting off a stud that we want to get to, like Şengün or Brunson or something. So I'm probably not going to prioritize them, but they're just fine. Last game of the slate could be pretty interesting. A little surprising, personally, that it's a 3.5-point spread. OKC on the road against the Jazz. They are the favorites. It's a very, very nice 240 total. I mean, I'm a little shocked that Thunder aren't bigger favorites here, but I guess it just attributed it to them being on the road, perhaps. But let's see. For the OKC side, looks like Jalen Williams is questionable. He's been missing some games. Cason Wallace is also questionable. And they have a bunch of other fringe guys that we probably wouldn't want to roster anyways. And then on the other side, Utah is at full strength. So starting with OKC, with this injury news, in mind, who do you like?
Yeah, both Jalen Williamses are questionable. The good one is the one that matters. Shea gets a big bump if he's out. Ditto for Josh Giddey and Chet Holmgren. Giddey for 5'9" is really interesting. He played 41 minutes. I guess that was double OT, but the minutes have been kind of wonky with him, but I think he has a path to more if Jalen Williams is out. Cason Wallace started the last game, so that's not totally nothing. Like if both of them are out, guys like Aaron Wiggins presumably become more alluring values. I think Wiggins for 3.5 becomes one of the better values on the slate. He's been playing a lot anyway. I'd be pretty interested in that, even though he's Jalen Williams. Lou Dort looks fine. Volatile minutes for him. But again, like these guys that are fringy still are in the rotation. So they're going to have to play a more condensed rotation than he otherwise would if some of these guys are out. Chet, happy to get to him. Utah doesn't really protect the rim that well. And I think I mentioned SGA, but he's like a core play no matter what. No injury tag on him. He's going to be probably the best spend on the slate if Luka is out.
Yeah, I think he becomes way more of a priority if Luka is out. If Luka is in, and depending on how you build, I don't know if I agree personally that you have to roster SGA, that he's a core play, but he is a good price and he projects really well, and it's a really, really good matchup. Like for instance, you could leverage with Chet. Chet's in a great spot. He'll be like a third of the ownership probably when all is said and done. And then when you're looking at guys like Brunson and Şengün, who look pretty nice on the slate, and then obviously Luka, if he's in, it might be tough to prioritize. But I like him a lot. I like Chet a lot. And then the big news, like you said, Jalen Williams, if he is out, Giddey at 5'9" is very, very interesting. Let's not forget about our buddy Lou Dort, who always looks good down there at 4.3. He actually never does, but he would get more solidified minutes if Jalen Williams is still out, and he'd look pretty good in this matchup. I do agree to an extent with you on like Aaron Wiggins too, but I'm just having nightmares of last time I used Aaron Wiggins and he didn't start the second half. So it's always dicey with OKC guys. You just never know what they're going to do with the rotation. All right, kicking over to the last team of the night, the Utah Jazz. They're at home and they're underdogs. They are at full strength. This is one of those situations where we never know for sure how the rotation is going to work out. The only thing we do know is Markkanen is going to play about 35 minutes, and he's the only reliable source. But how are you feeling about the Jazz tonight?
Yeah, this is like the same thing with OKC, just the rotation's wild every single night. It's kind of just going off vibes. Chris Dunn and Keontae George are under 4K. Fontecchio's 4K. Olenek is around 4K. Like, they're all just kind of interchangeable. I think they're fine as pivots away from, if you don't want to punt with Aaron Holiday or Dennis Smith Jr., getting to Keontae George or Chris Dunn, I think makes sense. Certainly not fading Amen Thompson to get to these guys. I think Amen Thompson is the obvious chalk play that I will be eating. But I do think they're viable kind of as DSJ pivots. Sexton, Clarkson, Markkanen, they're all fine. I do think Clarkson at 6K is still really interesting. He's been really bad lately, but minutes are still generally there. It's a good spot for Walker Kessler and John Collins. OKC is not a good rebounding team, so some of the bigs look okay. Like, you can make a case for pretty much anyone in the rotation, but it's hard to have a lot of confidence in any individual play except for Markkanen, I suppose.
Yeah, confidence is an interesting word in this regard because it's pretty volatile. But if you're looking at from a GPP perspective, sometimes you just got to take those risks and hope variance is in your favor. So having said all that, I think Keontae George looks really, really interesting at 3.9K. His minutes are ticking up 27, 22, 21, and 25 over his last 4 games. So while he's coming off the bench, I actually like that, by the way, because he's not running into OKC's solid starting lineup defense here. And then, if the game somehow blows out, he might be okay there too. So I just think his minutes are safe, and he does a lot when he's out there. Pretty good points per minute guy. See, where's he ranking here? Actually, only 0.82 on the season, but in general, he has been productive when he's out there. So he's probably my favorite value just because I feel like his minutes are the safest. He's the one I have the most faith in here. And I'd play him over just about every other value here, I think. Overall, I'm with you on the other guys. Sexton, Collins, Clarkson, they're just fine, but they're not going to be priorities for me. All right, so real quick before we wrap this up, let's go over to the ownership projector for the slate. Amen Thompson. We both agree we're just going to eat that chalk, and whatever happens, so be it. Is there anybody else here in the rest of the ownership at DFS Hero that stands out as somebody you'd want to fade?
I think Achua has a low floor for that ownership, but I get it just because you won't find many guys outside of New York that are going to play 40 minutes, guaranteed almost. Deuce McBride is the one I could do without. He's not guaranteed to play even 20 minutes. I have more faith in Dennis Smith in that range. I mentioned the Utah pivots you can consider too. Şengün, center's not great on this slate, but there are alternatives. Talked about Gobert, Bam, Vucevic, Chet Holmgren. Potential Memphis centers as well. So I don't think Şengün is a total must. I understand why he's popular, but a lot of good spend ups on this slate.
Yeah, it's true. Precious, it's really tough because the price is fine and the minutes are really, really hard to replicate elsewhere. So he's a tough fade even at that ownership. I do think if you find another guy in that range that's not going to be owned, that is worth considering a pivot. For me, it's going to be Dennis Smith Jr. Depends where his ownership is at once we get closer to lock. But if he's going to be 20% or higher, I mean, he historically is an incredibly inconsistent player. He just paid off last night. Is he a really good bet to pay off 2 nights in a row? I doubt it. So if a lot of people are going to be on him, I'll just make a pivot there. I am also with you on Miles McBride. I think he is a totally fine punt at 3.7K. But yeah, his minutes did come down from the last game, 29 to 20. So if his role is going to randomly, reduce and Tibbs ends up seeing somebody else, maybe bring out our boy Evan Fournier, bring him out and replace him or something, or somebody else steps up, then yeah, Miles McBride at 20% ownership could be pretty troubling. All right, as far as smash plays, before we wrap up here, Amen Thompson is obviously looking like the best. Who are you building your lineup around completely besides the chalkiest play on the board?
It's probably going to be SGA. I understand Brunson, DiVincenzo, they'll probably be in the mix too. I'm not super psyched about Towns if he's going to be popular, but he's not really projecting for a lot as of now. SGA is probably the one guy that really stands out the most.
Yeah, I can't argue against that either. It's a really good matchup and a tight spread. I personally am probably going to build around Jalen Brunson. You can't really argue with the minutes there, and his projection's good. I guess there is blowout risk, and maybe Tibbs just screws us all and just sits them after the third quarter for the first time ever, right? But that's where I'm at. I think that does it for us. Hopefully this helps you out. And if it does, please give us a like on this video and also consider subscribing to the channel so you can catch future videos. Thanks for watching and good luck.